Now, some organisms are more important than others when it comes to this list. And it really just depends on how endangered they are, if they're endangered. So essentially the importance of that species and the survival of that species. Appendix 1 is the strongest. These are species that are on the brink of extinction, and the reason they're on the brink of extinction is because people are trading them or their parts. So any kind of commercial trade of these organisms is banned. What commercial trade means is if this jaguar dies, or even if it doesn't die, if I have a jaguar skin, I cannot just sell that because I want to. I found this dead jaguar and I want to sell this skin to someone in Japan. I can't do that. That's considered a commercial trade. However, if I am at a zoo and I have a jaguar and this zoo in Japan is really amazing and they could provide so much more for the jaguar, that would be allowed because that is not commercial. In that case, it's usually for research or it's to improve the quality of life for that organism. So again, these species of only about 1,000 of them have the highest protection because they're threatened with extinction because of trade, because people are capturing these animals and selling them or selling their parts. So let's say I have this jaguar, I want to sell it. One of the conditions of that export permit, the way I'd be allowed to get rid of this animal, is the wild population cannot be affected. So if this was a jaguar in a zoo, doesn't really matter if I, give it to someone in Europe because that's not a wild organism. So I would probably be approved of that. If I took a manatee, out of its population and let's say it's a breeding adult, that's probably going to affect the population and I wouldn't be allowed to export it. You also have to have an import permit. So whoever is taking that animal has to demonstrate they can care for it. So I'm a zookeeper. I want to give this jaguar to a zoo in Japan. In Japan, they have to get permits that say, yes, we have state-of-the-art facilities. We have hired X vet, Y vet, Z vet. They have X amount of experience. It's going in a pen this large. It has all of these requirements. And the reason for all of this is, again, we're trying to protect these species, and if they need to be moved, that they will be taken care of, no matter where they are sent around the world. So that's Appendix 1. Most endangered species are on Appendix 1. Appendix 2 has about 21,000 species. The majority of species are on Appendix 2. These are things like river otters or Venus flytraps or iguanas. These organisms can be traded. They can be traded commercially. So if I had a Venus flytrap and I wanted to sell it for money, I could. Mainly because these species aren't endangered. Usually, most of the time, they're not endangered. But if they weren't regulated, they could be. For example, iguanas. Iguanas are pets. They're weird pets, but some people have them as pets. If we had zero regulations on them, we fear that, while a lot of people might take them from the wild, a lot of people might sell them for pets, and then they might become endangered. Venus flytraps, really cool organism. If I don't regulate it, it's possible that too many people will take them. So if they're not endangered, there's a fear that they could be because they're a really cool organism that people like. So if I have a Venus flytrap and I want to sell it abroad, I have to prove that I'm not affecting the wild population. Maybe I took it from a salt marsh or a freshwater marsh and there was 1,000 Venus flytraps there. Well, it's okay if I take one. And if I can document that, yes, there were thousands there, I took one of them, it's okay, then I can sell it. And it doesn't matter who I sell it to. If I sell it to my friend in Germany, my German friend doesn't have to do anything. Essentially, we've accepted, yes, we're going to lose this organism. If that organism dies because my friend in Germany doesn't know how to take care of plants, it's okay. It's not going to decimate the population. So these are kind of like, could be endangered, but aren't. The last appendix, Appendix 3, is the smallest. There's only about 170 species, and it's a weird appendix. The species listed on this appendix are requested by a particular country. Remember, 181 countries have signed this CITES treaty. This is just one particular country that's like, hey guys, can you just make sure that nothing weird's going on? So for example, if I had this hellbender, the United States has actually listed this on our Appendix 3. The hellbender is one of the largest salamanders in the world, which in and of itself is a novelty. If I wanted to get a hellbender and then like sell it to someone, well, I couldn't, because here in the United States we have other laws protecting that hellbender. So in that country, a person needs to get their own permits for the hellbender, the alligator snapping turtle, the sloth in Costa Rica. People have to go through extra steps to get an export permit, not through CITES, but through their own country's laws. Now, why this is important and what this appendix does is it's saying importing countries. So here I have the hellbender. Me in the United States. The United States has posted, hey, hellbender on Appendix 3. This guy in Germany is like, oh, look, I'm on Craigslist, and this guy is selling a hellbender. That's really cool. I want to bring that hellbender into my country. CITES steps in and essentially says, hey, make sure you see whatever certificates you need to see and that you know the United States has approved this. We as CITES, we don't have it on our Appendix 1 or 2, but we are recognizing that this country, the United States, does want to protect this species, even though we as CITES has not quite approved it yet. And why this appendix even exists is to get a species on Appendix 1 or 2 takes the ratification of, I think, 2/3 of the countries. So if 2/3 of the countries don't elect and say, yeah, we'll protect the hellbender, then they get pushed to Appendix 3, where they don't have that much regulatory power at this case, but it's more of like a strong suggestion like, hey, we recognize the United States is trying to control people taking out hellbenders. Can you help them? Appendix 3 is also because, the hellbender might be becoming endangered in the United States, but around the world, it's actually doing just fine. And CITES doesn't want to put up all these regulatory barriers between countries where the hellbender is doing just fine. It's just the United States that's having a problem. Or in Costa Rica, they have all the sloths. Everywhere else, they're doing fine. So they don't want to be like, well, let's tell all the countries they need to take care of this one animal when it's only one country having the problem. So again, Appendix 1, most endangered species where trade is greatly affecting their numbers. Appendix 2 is trade could be affecting their numbers. And number 3, these are essentially species not on 1 and 2 that a country is having maybe declining populations of that organism. Pause here for a video. The video is actually showing one of these CITES conventions. It's only a snippet. It's actually brought to you by Fish and Wildlife Service so that you can get an idea of kind of the inner workings of what's happening in CITES and the collaborations that occur between countries. Now, the act that you're probably the most familiar with. So CITES came out only a couple years before. The Endangered Species Act, and this is an act that is still maintained today, still updated today. This is United States specific. So CITES was international. The Endangered Species Act is, I want to say, unique to the United States. Many other countries have a similar regulatory law, but in the United States, the Endangered Species Act, or sometimes you will see me shorthand it as ESA. So the Endangered Species Act is classifying organisms and protects organisms by either listing them as an endangered species or a threatened species. And if you are listed on the endangered species list, what that does is it prohibits takes, so you can't take them out of their environment. You cannot trade them, so whether this is a living organism or parts. If you have a bald eagle feather, they're not endangered anymore, but for example, you cannot give that to your friend. Technically, that'd be illegal. As well as habitat damage. And that's actually kind of key, because very few laws, species laws, look at the habitat level. Here is this, really rare owl. And it lives in these trees. And these trees are very special trees. It's a certain species of trees. So not only would you get in trouble for affecting the owl, but you would also get in trouble for affecting the forest the owl is found in. Because if you destroy its habitat, you're probably going to be hurting the owl as well, as far as their population. Now, the Fish and Wildlife Service, they were the managing authority for CITES. They also oversee the Endangered Species Act, as well as NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Fish and Wildlife is kind of the bigger one, protecting most of the species. NOAA comes in mainly for aquatic species. So thinking about fish, dolphins, things that spend a majority of its life in the water, NOAA is typically the ones who are watching over them. Even though it is called Fish and Wildlife Service, that's kind of how they divvy it up. Main point, just know it's those two organizations. So for the endangered species list, anyone can suggest a species. If you're like, man, I think these bluebirds are going endangered, you could submit a proposal for it to be considered to be listed as an endangered species. Now, with that said, though, you have to have some sort of science background. You don't have to be a scientist, but you need to found it with facts. If you don't really have any facts to go with it, if you literally just wrote, I had bluebirds in my backyard this year, well, last year I used to have 10 of them. This year I only have 5. You will be ignored. But if you are doing a study for, say, 10 years, you are looking at data sets all across the United States, then it would be taken more seriously. And it goes through so much review. It goes through public review, it goes through private review, it goes through governmental review. It takes about 2 years to be listed on the endangered species list. 2 very crucial years where that species could, in effect, go endangered. Currently on the list, there's about 1,300 species that are listed as endangered and 370 that are listed as threatened. If you're threatened, your numbers are typically going down, but not down to the level where you need full protections of habitat, of everything. Now, of this list, so that's what, about 1,500 to 1,600 organisms listed on the endangered species list, only 28 have recovered. So only 28 have been delisted. That's less than, let's see, that would be about 1%, or a little over 1%. That sounds bad. It sounds like they haven't done anything. But keep in mind, all the organisms listed had a declining population. What this has done is it's prevented species from going extinct. So although not a lot of species have gained so many members back to become delisted, they haven't gone extinct either. So although that number seems grim, just definitely keep that in mind. It's crucial to keep that in mind because the Endangered Species Act comes under attack a lot by political parties and by people because they say it's not successful, but it is. We have 1,600 species that aren't extinct, and that's a lot.